Good day. My name is Henry Ford and I'm the Master Builder here at Detroit Bikes. This video we're doing for you is to show you how to go from box to bike, get this guy on the road for you so you have many more miles. In the event you have more questions than the manual or this video covers, feel free to go by to your local bike shop and they'd be happy to help you and assist you and get you rolling. So to do your assembly of your Detroit Bikes A-Type, just a small smattering of tools you'll need. First you want a X-Acto blade and some cutters, followed by Allen keys 5, 6, 4, and 3. We like to use the T-handles, but feel free to use a standard set of Allen keys if you wish. Work just as fine. Next we have our wrenches, a 15 mil, a 10 mil, and an 8 millimeter. Last thing you'll need is a standard screwdriver. Let's open our box and see what's inside. Carefully pull the staples and make sure you don't cut yourself. Open it wide so you have full access. So now, I'll show you what we have inside. First thing we'll pull out is our spacer box and our front fender. Next, we have our handlebar section. And then with our cutters, we can go ahead and remove the zip tie from the front wheel. And go ahead and pull that out. Last thing that's located in the box would be our parts box. That's located under the front fork, so you would have to maneuver the bike to remove that. Go ahead and lift the bike up, grab your parts box, and slide it out. Let's take a look at what we have inside of our parts box. First thing we have is our seat post. Next, we have our fender bracket. We also have our saddle, a set of pedals for you, and as well as our manual and parts bag. So here we have the contents of your parts bag. First we have your seat post collar, fasteners for your front fender and fender bracket, shift pin, front axle hardware, nuts and washers, as well as reflectors and reflector nuts for your front and rear wheel. Now let's start on our first sub-assembly, our front fender. So you have your fender bracket, and your fasteners. Go ahead and grab a screw and a washer. Place together. Take that fastener and washer and put it through the rear of the fender bracket with your hole. Sometimes they won't slide in, you will need to thread it in. But that allows you the free hand to operate and both tools when connected together. You also want to check your circumference of your fender bracket, making sure it's large enough to accept the fender cleanly. If it is tighter, feel free to just bend it slightly gently, and that will open it up for you. Once you've got those two together, go ahead and insert your fender bracket to your fender. Next thing you want to do is add your washer and your locking nut. Once you get it finger tight, you use your tools to tighten completely. The second of our two sub-assemblies would be for our saddle and seat post. You will need a number 6 Allen to install the two together. First thing you want to do is grab your saddle. Make sure the springs are pointed towards you with the nose away. Your seat post has this clamp. This clamp opens and is in 2 parts, secured by this fastener. Before we get started, you want to make sure there's enough room between the clamp to allow the bar of your saddle to rest in between. Once you have that, place the fastener towards you. Go ahead and insert it between the 2 bars and position the clamp where they run across each bar, resting in the middle, top and bottom. Now, if you're having a hard time getting these two to go in, you may want to loosen your fastener up to allow more space. But once you have it in position, both are on top and bottom of the rail. Go ahead and begin to tighten until both rails, the clamp around both rails. Now once you get it snug, where the clamp's secured on the bars, you want to position the angle of your seat tube so it's most comfortable when you ride. I like to do so with 3 indicator lines exposed, and we can work from there once we get it installed. Once you get your indicator lines exposed, do your full tightening, and it's ready for installation. Alright, now that we've completed our 2 sub-assemblies, we've pulled the bike out, got ourselves a nice little work area, and ready to install everything. First thing we want to do is grab our saddle and seat post that we just assembled, and out of our parts bag would be the seat post clamp. The seat post clamp has a ridge on it, and that would indicate the top of the seat post clamp, and that's the area you want facing up. Once you find that area, go ahead and slide your seat post over the clamp as such, with the fastener on the right side or the drive side of the bike. Secondly, go ahead and grab your saddle and seat post, drop it right in. Once you have your desired height, go for it and tighten down your clamp. Next thing you want to do before we flip our bike over is install our handlebars. They do come wrapped up in cardboard. Just go ahead and remove that. There's a strap here holding all the cables together. Let's go ahead and cut that off. Once removing the cap, go ahead and untangle all of your cables, get them off the way. Remove the protective cap on the bottom of your stem, and it's ready for installation. Quite simply, just drop in the head tube. Once you get your desired position, use your number 6 and tighten it down. Now that we have our saddle and handlebars installed, we want to remove all of our packaging material before we can rotate the bike on its top to do the final assembly. Now that you have all the packing material off and the bike rotated, now we can work on installing our front fender, which is one of our sub-assemblies, and our front brake. First thing you want to do is grab your front fender with the fender brackets towards the back of the bike, the tab towards the front of the fork. Go ahead and drop that fender down. The next thing you want to do is your last two remaining fasteners. Make sure you put your last two washers on. Feed them through the ends of the fender bracket and the end of the dropout from your front fork. To install that, you will need a number 3 Allen. Get one side started. Grab your other fastener. Same thing with the other side. Before you secure them completely, you want to make sure they're loose so we can still work with our front brake and installing the top of the fender. On your front brake, it's attached to the handlebar. Go ahead and remove the barrel nut and the large washer together. Rotate it so the pads are facing up. And you want to feed the pad and the caliper over the front fender and through the bracket with the stud that comes off the caliper. When this is complete, feel free to continue feeding your stud off the caliper through the hole in your front fork at the very top of the fork. Once that's inserted, go ahead and take your barrel nut and large washer, insert that to the rear hole of the fork until the stud of the caliper and the barrel nut meet. It may take some finagling, but once they mate, you can go ahead and thread your caliper to your fender and fork combination. Once you get them started, go ahead and use your Allen keys to torque accordingly. So now we've completed installing our front fender, fender bracket, and front caliper. We're going to put the wheel in next. So for our front wheel, there's no nuts or washers on that came in our parts bag. Go ahead and put those on. The washers have a little hook. You want the hook to face in. One on each side. Just hand do a couple threads. Cut to the other side. Same thing. Hook on the inside, facing in, and then our nut on the outside. 2 turns. Now, before we insert it, we want to make sure we have our direction of our tread pattern correct. And it's typically easiest to imagine the tread pattern as an arrow. And that arrow you want to go forward. So when you place the wheel into your fork, when the bike is moving forward, you want the arrows to lead the way. So once you figured that, go ahead and drop your wheel through your fork and pressing between the calipers so it seats completely. Making sure your washers are on the outside of the fork. Go ahead and drop the fork in. While doing so, make sure the washers that we have the security bar on go into the whole recessed area for your dropouts in your front fork. Once those are locked in secure, go ahead and tighten your nuts down. by hand. Then we take our 15mm wrench and tighten completely. Alright, now since the front wheel is installed, we can return the bike to its normal position, get ready to install our pedals. Our pedals have two sides, left side and right side. They are threaded differently for the basis on the crank arms. Easy to identify which pedal goes where by looking on the end. The R indicates the right side, the L indicates the left side. Once you start to thread them on, being threaded, you would have to start the threads by going forward. Once you get them started by hand, you can go ahead and take your 15mm. But they do need to be flat to start. Go ahead, get it finger tight. Grab your 15mm wrench and do your final tightening, making sure it's snug to prevent it from coming out. Do the same thing on the left side. Remember to go on, twist forward, and take off, twist back. Alright, so we've got our pedals installed. Next thing we want to do is work on our shifter. So from the handlebars, the shifter is located on the right side. There'll be a loose cable attached. Go ahead and unwrap that from your bars. And we provided cable guides where you can work your cables to the back of the frame. They are split, so all you have to do is place the cable in between the two guides and then forward on to the back. They will lay flat once you get them installed. One important thing to do, after you get the third clip in, make sure you go behind and under the bottom of your bike, the bottom bracket. That way there'll be no interference with the crank arm or the chain. Once you get below here, feel free to fish your shifter through and attach your last cable. The next thing we're going to do, once we've got our cable in the guides, is connect our shift mechanism. Things you'll need: a 10mm tool, and this shift pin that comes in the parts bag. Now this pin has a raised edge on one side and a smooth edge on the other. You want to make sure that smooth edge goes in first to the middle of the axle of the rear wheel. Once you insert it, I like to just give it a push to make sure the spring action is working correctly. Then we can install our mechanism. To do so, there's edges in here that will accommodate the nut. Go ahead and push this on. And I like to make sure our cable is in line with the chain stay. Once we get that positioned correctly, we take our 10mm wrench and go ahead and tighten the secure nut. Once you get it tightened, then we can go into calibrating for correct shifting. All right, now to make our adjustments for our shifter. We always want to adjust our shifter with the hand control in gear 2. Once in gear 2, you want to make sure the yellow indicator winds up in between both of the white lines where the arrows are on top and bottom. To do that, you would need just your 10mm wrench again, loosen the locking nut. Once you've got that loose, now you can make your adjustment for your lever. You do so by turning the dial. And once you turn, it gives minute movement. And you want the yellow indicator to be both in between both lines. And once you do that, feel free to lock down your retaining nut, make sure it's snug. Then go through your gears and make sure it settles back into number 2 position. Now we're moving on to the final adjustments before we're ready to ride. Moving on to the front brakes. Now, the goal of this is to get the pads from your caliper to roll and rest right on the rim when the brake is applied. Now, to do that, we just want to make sure we align it correctly, and then we can do our adjustments. For this exercise, you will need your number 5 and your number 4 wrenches. Go ahead and take your number 4, slightly loosen your pad until it's evenly placed on the center of the flat surface of your wheel. Now, if you want to give the caliper a squeeze, that will indicate you using your lever to apply the brake, and that will tell you where along your rim your pad will wind up. Once you're happy with it being centered and even from top to bottom, go ahead and tighten down. And we do this on both sides. Give it a squeeze from your lever, and the cable is moving but the brake is not. This is when you want to adjust your tension. That's when you'll need your number 5. Go ahead and insert your number 5. Tighten the cable down. Pull your release. And check for contact. Again, do this on both sides and repeat when necessary if you want a quicker braking. All right, we're almost done. 2 more steps left, one of them being installation of our reflector. Our reflector has 2 sides to it. The one side we want to be concerned with will be the open side that will fit the reflector nut. You also notice there's a groove on this open side, and that allows the spoke to rest flush against the reflector. We like to install them directly opposite of the valve stem. That offers a little bit of uniformity to the bikes. Once you find the opposite, go ahead and pick your spoke, weave it between 3, with the one indicator being right in the groove of the spoke. I like to go ahead and drop it where there's a little resistance between these outside ones. That helps it keep position. On your washer, on your reflector nut, there is a gap that will accept the spoke. Just go ahead and slide that down. Make sure it sits flush in the reflector. And the tool you will need is a flathead screwdriver. That accepts through the top. Give it a quick twist, and you're locked in position. Do the same thing for the rear wheel, and we're ready for our final adjustment. All right, we're almost done. Last thing I like to do is do a once over everything and do any final adjustments, starting with your handlebars. The tools you'll need would be a 6mm, a 4mm, and a 3mm with a screwdriver. First thing I like to do, we like to keep our brake handles in a comfortable position. So once I feel roughly in a 45-degree angle, I go ahead and lock it down with my number 4, I'm sorry. Just a few turns, and that's locked in position. Next, our shifter here, we want to make sure that the indicator, which advises us of what gear we are in, is at an area where it's positioned on the saddle. You can easily see that. Once I've determined that, I go ahead and take our number 3, slide it into a spot just below the dial indicator. Go ahead and give that a tightening too. Please, you don't need to go too tight, just want to make sure it's snug so it doesn't move when you want to shift your gears. Next thing, we have our reflector. I like to position that obviously directly in front of the head stem and go ahead and tighten that down with a standard screwdriver. You can use a Phillips for this as well, but standard works just as fine. Lastly, in our cockpit area, I want to take our number 6, go ahead and tighten our stem, top and bottom here. So you want to make sure that's tight. Come around to the front and underneath. Go ahead and give that a turn. Make sure it's secure. It's very important to do so because you don't want to ride your bike, have your wheel go one way and your handlebars go another way. So very important to make sure you tighten down these 2 areas as tight as you can get them. You can't get too tight. Now the absolute last step you need to do is go ahead and fill your tires up between 55 and 75 psi, depending on your riding conditions and your comfort level. And this thing is ready to ride.